When we look at entrepreneurial mindset, it may be something that you've heard about, and particularly if you're in or near university circles that study entrepreneurship, it's something that a lot of time is being spent in trying to understand. What is it that goes on in the mind of the entrepreneur that's different than what goes on in the mind of individuals that are pursuing other pursuits, that are working with established companies or organizations? The reason this is so important is, again, as we've talked about before, it's the entrepreneur that causes entrepreneurship. So in that way, there are many different things going on in the market. There are technology changes, there are other influencing factors that open up new opportunities, but it's the entrepreneur that's at the heart of the matter. And so by understanding how they think, how they react, how they see opportunities, how they assess risk, we can better understand what it takes to be successful in that, and we can begin to model or at least measure some behavior and some motivations based on the mindset of successful entrepreneurs. And those answers are critical to helping us understand some assets and capabilities to successfully launch new ventures. And so we're going to look at that front piece. We're going to look at achievement. We're going to look at individualism, control, focus, and optimism as a couple of elements that are typically common among successful entrepreneurs and that are pieces of that entrepreneurial mindset. So need for achievement. Even without reading, what's that sound like to you?
Somebody that wants to be recognized for what they've done.
So people that want to be recognized for their accomplishment.
Someone wants to strive for success.
You got that strive for success. So again, we would buy that those are things that make sense for entrepreneurs, that there's some preference for challenge, that there's some acceptance for the outcomes, and that there's that personal drive, that inner drive, that thirst for success. And this is one of the key indicators that we see for entrepreneurs that have success and that stick to their ideas, see their ideas through. Everyone's not going to love your idea. Some people will tell you you shouldn't do it. Some people you know and love may tell you you shouldn't do it. But part of that element that lets people persist is this element of need for achievement. Who's this guy? Richard Branson. So who is Richard Branson? Again, by hands, who's Richard Branson? He owns Virgin Mobile. Owns Virgin Airlines.
He owns an island, right?
He owns Necker Island.
Yeah. Did he have like a record company?
Owns Virgin Records. Owns about 200 companies.
Oh, wow. Virgin Galactic.
So in that way, it's airlines, and as you see these small, as you see the logos or as you see the categories, it is books, games, online casinos, wine. Virgin Media is the records and things of that nature. Virgin Mobile, he does some online banking. He does some nonprofit stuff. Virgin Festivals or big music festivals. The airlines, Virgin America,
Virgin Australia,
Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Galactic, or these low Earth orbital spaceships. And when you hear about people taking these space rides, they're paying a couple $100,000 for.
Zero gravity.
It takes you up kind of outside, and you get to see the Earth from where the astronauts see it and such. Why does he do all this? He's inventive.
He has a million safety nets.
A million safety nets, but why not start a successful business and do that? Why not start Virgin Music and do that? Why not start Virgin Mobile and do that? Why so many different things?
Wherever he sees a market, he wants to be part of it.
He wants to be part of new markets.
More ways to make money.
Is he interested in making money?
You want this one?
He's a billionaire a few times over. Hard to spend that amount of money.
In a lifetime.
So in that way, hard to spend what he makes. You have to really work to spend what he makes in a day. It's exhausting. What did our prior slide have on it? Need for achievement. Again, these slides move in a certain order. So you would think that it's not money, that it's not freedom, and this is a lot of work to manage all these firms, even with good people working with you. But he has some greater need, some greater motivation of starting new things, of leading new things, of being on the forefront of new elements, be it mobile, be it media, be it space flight.
Which one was his first one?
He started with a magazine. So he started with a magazine company. I believe so. And so it grew slowly but surely from there. So individualism, another piece of entrepreneurial mindset. And what we look at here is some willingness to go against the norm. When everyone else is going to work for a big company, when everyone else is going to grad school, when everyone else is making the safe play, entrepreneurs oftentimes do something a bit different. And they do that recognizing that not everybody is going to think it's a good idea. Not everybody is going to support or approve of what you're doing. But there's some acceptance of that. And there's some willingness to do it anyway. And in that way, you still take the initiative, you still strive to do that thing, which, again, may not be the popular thing, and exert some level of your individual decision-making as the key driver for that.
Richard Branch was his name. But don't you think, like, in the beginning when he first started, like, his drive was to be successful in terms of money, and then after he became so big, it became for achievement?
When we look at, again, need for achievement, it doesn't mean that that's your only motive, or that's the only piece of mindset. But there are probably other motives, as we've talked about before, freedom and independence and control and financial and money, that may play a role in it. I don't know a lot of entrepreneurs that say, I'd like to start a successful company and be broke. Now, they may not say, I want to make a lot of money, and that's the only thing I want to do, on average. Now, some do, so I won't say that no one does. So I would say it's a piece, but when you look at all the companies that he started, I would say money as a motivator dropped off a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of a bio on this entrepreneur, and when you think you know who it is, throw your hand up. So he inherited a small billboard company when he was 24. Father committed suicide, and he essentially became the owner of the company. Leveraged that and the success money he made doing billboard and billboard advertising to start a television station that was on a UHF channel. Again, this is kind of pre-cable for the most part. So at this time, you had your ABC, your CBS, your NBC, and your PBS. So when I was your age, we had 4 channels. Not the 1,000 that I have now on Verizon. We had 4 channels. And you may have gotten a UHF channel or 2, and that's what WTBS was when he bought it. People know who it is? Ted Turner. Ted Turner. When you buy a television station, what do you need to do with your station? You need programming. You need shows. You need something to put on your TV station. So he formed a partnership and 3 years later bought the Atlanta Braves. How many games does a baseball team play in a year? 162. How many hours is a game? 3 to 4.
Plus like pregame and
Plus I can have a pregame show and a postgame show. And maybe they go to the playoffs. And maybe they go to the World Series. I can get a lot of content by buying a sports team on the cheap, which the Braves were in the early 80s. So what are my alternatives? What are my alternatives to buying a sports team if content is my goal?
Like QVC stuff?
I can do infomercials. Tough to make money doing that.
News.
I can do news, which he did later, but an expensive proposition.
Reality TV?
I can do reality TV, which he didn't invent. Others did that a bit later as a cheap way of developing content. But what we found is in its era, in its time, given what people's interests were, given also a broadcast that was local. So the WTBS was based out of Atlanta. And his market, where the majority of his station was viewed, was in the southeast region, which made sense for the team that he acquired. So again, the pieces began to line up. Wrestling in its heyday of the Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Mr. T, mid-80s was very popular. Set records on pay-per-view. Sold out football stadiums. Cartoons started with wrestling characters on Saturday morning. You had your Hulk Hogan lunchbox that you took to school with you. So, again, another acquisition. What else did wrestling provide him?
Action figures.
Right back to what we talked about earlier. Advertising or
Market.
how are these four things connected?
Programming.
Programming provided him with another content stream for the television. So in that way, again, we see that things became connected. Started CNN after pitching the idea to a lot of the big broadcasters. Went to CBS, went to others to try and pitch the idea of let's collaborate and start this cable news network. What did the big guys think of it? Foolish. Nobody's going to sit around and want to watch news 24 hours a day. And now Turner networks have evolved into what you see here with the TNTs and the headline news and the Turner Classic Movies, TBS, True TV. There are other Turner sports stations as well. You may have eaten at a Ted's Montana Grill. Why is it called Ted's Montana Grill?
Montana's name's Ted.
He's from Georgia, but his name is Ted, but he owns half of Montana. He's the largest private landowner in the U.S.
how do you own nothing?
You buy it. Buy some land here, you buy some land there, and in time, you get to half. Also made the largest donation to the United Nations, started the United Nations Foundation with $1 billion gift. When we look at control, there are two ways that we can perceive or think about events and outcomes. One is that we believe we have an internal locus of control, meaning that we have some level of influence, and in essence, we can play a role in kind of shaping our own destiny. Alternatively, we can have an external locus of control that's geared a bit more towards thinking about luck, circumstances, the market. Things are going to happen, they're not going to happen, and I don't have a lot of influence on it one way or the other. What do you think most entrepreneurs exhibit? Internal or external?
Internal.
Why internal?
Because they're taking charge of their own destiny.
So there's an element of, again, kind of taking charge of that own destiny. Chances are your venture is not going to work. And if you believe that, then you probably shouldn't make a run at starting the venture. But if you believe you can make it work, if you believe you can have some influence on shaping the success, if you believe you can have some control of that, then you're exhibiting that internal locus of control that most successful entrepreneurs have. And so it's being able to attribute those outcomes to yourself as opposed to others. Now, you may believe in luck. You properly could recognize that market forces can swing your way, or that the competitive environment could be friendly to new entrants. So it's not to discard those, but it's that you think you can make it happen. You think you can influence the outcomes. And if you believe that, then you're in this internal camp. So, late 90s, this is how you bought things, digitally. Until recently, these are your choices for buying vehicles. So one person decided that there should be a fifth option for being able to make online payments, and that you should have better options for your vehicles. So who's that?
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. So 42 years old, worth almost $3 billion, was part of the PayPal founding team, subsequently launched Tesla, and we'll talk about what Tesla is a little bit later. Also launched SpaceX, which is a Virgin Galactic competitor.
Oh, you go to space?
NASA is outsourcing their rocket operations to his company now. So again, gets involved in things that you could argue an entrepreneur has no business being in. You're going to compete against Visa? You're going to compete against Mercedes and BMW? You're going to compete against NASA?
Pretty good for a 42-year-old.
And he's done it, and done it well successfully.
Cheers.
And again, we'll talk about him a little bit later. So focus plays a role as well. As an entrepreneur, there are lots of things that you need to attend to. There's the product, there's the market, there's the customer, there may be investors. But entrepreneurs are effective in exhibiting focus and making sure they get single tasks done effectively. Occasionally, I meet people that are trying to start multiple companies at the same time. I'm trying to do a clothing label and the social network and launch this app and DJ. What's the problem with that?
You don't have enough time.
You don't have time. Pursuing any one of those individually and having success is a big task. I would say you're busy but not productive, because everything is probably never going to really get the momentum. It's never going to get the snowball effect you need for it to mount to something significant. So in that way, when we look at entrepreneurs that exhibit some level of focus, they're able to see things through. And what we do to get to that are exhibit and apply different tools, and this is an approach called SMART goals that gets you beyond the point of selling a lot of shirts to the point of defining that success for you is to sell 100 shirts for $10 each by Friday. And so I think doing things like this helps you narrow your focus, helps you achieve goals, and helps you decide what not to do. And many of us have a lot of opportunities. Many of us have a lot of ideas. And a big piece of deciding what we're going to do is deciding what we're not going to do. And particularly entrepreneurs that are working by themselves, which is not uncommon, particularly in the beginning, I found are less productive, not for lack of ability, but for lack of focus and for lack of accountability. And what I mean by that is, so you and I start a company. I tell you by Friday I'm going to sell 100 shirts. What happens if I don't sell?
Then you're out of luck, I guess.
What do you do?
So I go to somebody else that can sell their shirts by Friday.
Okay, so if we have somebody that we're accountable for, and there's some dependency there, there are consequences or repercussions of not doing what you said you were going to do. Or at least some level of replanning and figuring out, well, why were we not able to make it happen, and what can we do better next time? What about if I'm operating by myself? If I say, I want to sell a lot of shirts this week, what happens if I sell 30? And my goal was to sell a lot.
There's no real definition of a lot.
There's no definition of a lot. I may pat myself on the back and say, well, 30 is better than 0.
But you're not really going anywhere.
But I'm not doing anything. I'm running a hobby and not a business. So in that way, but if I set these goals, at least it's something I'm accountable to, at least it's something I've declared as a goal, and something that I'm striving for and can measure my performance. And then the last element we're going to talk about in mindset is optimism. And with optimism, there are a couple of elements to consider here. Do we like optimism? Is it a good thing?
To some extent.
Feels good. Feels like a positive. And if we're not optimistic about our venture, it's going to be hard to get others excited. If you're presenting to some investors, if you're trying to get a bank loan, and say, well, I think it's a good idea, but I really don't know. It's probably going to fail. I'm not real sure. Competition's hard. You don't deserve their money, even if they're going to give it to you, but you're probably not going to get it. If you're trying to talk to somebody about joining your company, and you come in with kind of some half-hearted pitch, they're probably not going to be that excited about joining you. So again, we want to be optimistic, if not for ourselves, for others. But there's some element of being able to moderate that, of recognizing objectively that we want to think about changing markets. We want to think about being data-driven. We want to think about validating and verifying some of those assumptions. In summary, as you think about entrepreneurial mindset, there are 5 questions that we would invite you to consider. One is, what role does need for achievement play in your decisions? Secondly, how does individualism influence your decision making? Do you have an internal or an external locus of control? Are you effectively able to focus? And can you be optimistic while also mitigating these risks of overconfidence? And so as you think about yourself, as you think about how to analyze and pursue your own mindset, these are 5 guiding questions that can be used to do that effectively.